For people on this side of the world, it's the time of year where the nights close in early and we embrace the cosier things in life. The usual festive traditions make their annual appearance. Christmas trees go up, gifts are wrapped, and familiar songs are sung. But there's one festive notion that has been all but forgotten in most places, pushed into the darker corners of history: the tradition of telling Christmas ghost stories. The custom of sharing ghost stories during Christmas dates back to the Victorian era. Christmas was a time for family gatherings around a warm, crackling fire, where storytelling was a common pastime, and the long, cold winter nights were the perfect backdrop for tales of the supernatural. In the Victorian mind, Christmas wasn't just a time of merriment, but also a period of closeness with the spirit world. Similar to Halloween and Hopchinay, the holiday's association with the winter solstice was seen as a time when the barrier between the living and the dead was at its thinnest. Charles Dickens made Christmas ghost stories popular with his classic A Christmas Carol. Besides this, though, the tradition of telling ghost stories at Christmas gradually waned in the 20th century, lost to the commercialisation of the holiday. However, there has been a resurgence, with many people rediscovering the excitement of these tales as a unique way to celebrate Christmas. Today, the Christmas ghost story tradition lives on in various forms. In Austria, the half-goat, half-demon devil companion of St. Nicholas, Krampus, walks the streets every December, rewarding nice children by leaving presents and beating or kidnapping those who are naughty. In Norway, it was believed that witches and evil spirits would descend on homes on Christmas Eve. And in the UK, the likes of Mark Gatiss keep up the Victorian tradition with TV adaptations of bone-chilling tales every Christmas Eve. But here in the Isle of Man, we have a few ghostly tales of our own. To bring back this Christmas tradition from the dead, what follows is a collection of tales shared and experienced by locals that, to this day, they cannot explain. So, grab a blanket and a drink of something to warm your cockles, because some of these tales will likely send a shiver down your spine. Tonight's first tale is from local construction worker Lee, who ended up doing some work on a well-known house in Douglas. It would end up being a job he would never forget.
I've been in the construction industry all my life. I've worked in some of the older houses over here. I won't tell you how old this house was, because I think anybody that knows Manx history would probably be able to pinpoint it quite easily, given how old it was. But let's just say that inside the house there's paintings of that house where in Douglas, where that house seems to be Douglas. There's just fields around it. And my job was to go in. There was big double windows in there, the sort of window size where you're looking at a day to prep and then a day to paint. They were big windows. So I went in, did the usual thing of going to the top, going as far right as I could, which takes you to an attic, but like an attic on the top floor, because it's just like a spiral staircase, like a square staircase that goes all the way to the top. Opened the door and was greeted by a train set that was going. The trains were going round it. There was lights in the houses, and there was I remember smoke coming out of the chimneys, but I don't know if that's something I've added in after the fact. But bearing in mind, this house has no occupants. Nobody lives in it. They live in the gatehouse of the house because I think it's protected, historically protected. I just felt really weird. So I closed the door, went all the way down to the front door, and wedged the front door open and worked in the porch until the next day when my friend came round. A few days later, when we were in that house, we had to try and get into the basement to do some work. Between each room, there's containing rooms, little corridors, which I take is where the servants used to sort of scurry around between the rooms so the occupants wouldn't see them. And when we were trying to find a way to the basement, there was one door that led down to the basement that was barricaded from the inside with suitcases and all sorts just piled up on it. So we found that if we dropped into the storm drain, we could go around the outside of the house and try and get into the basement that way. The first room we came to, the window was locked. The second one led into a hallway, and it always makes the story sound really corny, because there was a rocking chair at the end of that hallway, and then we went round to the side, and the weird thing about looking into where the servant kitchens would have been was the tables were still set, and it was like just dust all over them. So we decided to go back round to the hallway and try to get our scrapers into the window so we could get that open to get in. And the minute we tried to put any pressure on the scraper, the rocking chair started rocking, and we were like, "Nah, we're out of it. We're just gone." And yeah, it's the creepiest thing. I mean, I've been in so many different houses, and it's easy to get creeped out in places, but that's the only place I've ever been where I was genuinely uncomfortable.
Lee isn't the only person who has experienced something spooky whilst at work. Nikki tells us a story that asks the question, can people who have passed reach out to contact us from beyond the grave?
I used to work in a nursing home on the island about 20 years ago, and this nursing home was in a big old terraced building. So it was this great big old kind of spooky house with over about 4 floors up, and there was a couple of older nurses that worked there that were always telling us all these spooky stories about things that had happened, and about how they would tell us how just before people died they would often say that they saw somebody, which I've actually had experience of, and they would say, you would go up to see them and they would say, "Oh, somebody was in my room today," or something like that, and literally within a day or two they would die. And the nurses said it was somebody that came from the other side to take them. There was also one room that we had that was particularly, people always saw things in their room. There was 2 different residents at different times that said they saw a man there wearing their clothes in their bedroom. And another time when I was on duty, a lady had died the night before, and I was on duty the following night with one of the older nurses, and we were just talking about Kathleen, the lady who'd passed away the night before. And as we were talking, the phone started ringing. So obviously at that time in the morning, it's always a bit of a worry when the phone rings at that time in the morning. So we picked up our staff phone, and the phone, it just kept ringing and ringing. And we were looking around to find where this phone was coming from, and it was the phone in Kathleen's room ringing. And as I picked it up, it disconnected. And the nurse that I was working with said to me, cool as a cucumber, "Oh, that would just be Kathleen letting us know that she got there okay." Scary as.
Our next tale comes not from a local Manxie, but from a Manx radio listener who wishes to remain anonymous. So our very own Howard Kane tells his tale about the time he unknowingly came face to face with the spirit from a famous ghost story.
One school summer holiday, I'd spent the evening in the social club playing pool with friends and cousins, enjoying a few Dorset ciders, when I realised late on I'd missed my lift back home. This was my aunt's cottage a few miles up the hill at the top of the village. I decided there was no point hanging around waiting to be picked up by my uncle, so I started walking back up the high street. After a short while, I got to a place which is surrounded by the cemetery on one side and a path to the common on the other. The wind was swirling in the trees, and with the natural darkness, it's not a place you want to linger. I was then walking that little bit quicker when I heard a woman's voice to my right on the start of the path leading to the common. She was dressed in a long white nightgown, and her hair was quite wild and long in her face. I noticed she was barefooted and looked pretty distressed, crying in fact, and calling out a man's name. Feeling the need to help, I said to her, "Are you okay?" And she looked past me and replied, "I'm looking for my husband. Have you seen him?" I looked down from where I'd come and pointed back to the castle, asking, "Was he down there?" She said again, "Have you seen him? They've taken him away," crying more and sobbing badly as she wiped her face. The tears sped down her cheeks. I turned again to see if anyone was following me, and when I turned back asking her, "What was he like?" she was gone, as quickly as she had appeared. Strange, I thought. I then walked a short way down the path amongst the bracken and overgrown hedge, but thinking better of it, I turned back, returning to the road. Disturbed, I then hastily, in fact, started running, continuing up the road past the picturesque thatched cottages, back to my aunt's cottage. I arrived out of breath to face the music of "Where have you been at this time of night?" and was told off by my aunt for being so late. Calming down, they then gave me a cocoa, which tasted great even after the cider. We were sitting for a while and they were discussing places to visit that weekend. I interrupted, saying, "A strange thing happened on the way back. Some woman was crying for her husband halfway up the village, dressed in her nightgown and no shoes." I carried on drinking and then looked up to see their faces, astonished. My aunt pressed me with some questions. "She was dressed in white," she repeated. "Yes, pure white, with bare feet." "Have you not heard of the White Lady?" she asked. "What White Lady?" I got a bit annoyed. They were making me out to be stupid. "The one who haunts the village from the castle?" "Oh, leave it out," I replied. "She wasn't a ghost, she was real, crying for her lost husband." I finished my cocoa and went to bed, leaving them to discuss the legend of the often called Lady in White or Headless Lady. Boy, was I shattered. Though I never saw that lady again, I read a book some years later about English ghosts, and in amongst the stories was, to my complete astonishment, the White Headless Lady of Corfe Castle. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I read the story, and I was cast back to my spooky experience with the distraught, barefoot Lady in White.
The unlucky amongst us have had the haunting experience of night terrors or sleep paralysis, where you're in that purgatory state between being asleep and awake, in which your mind feels conscious and your eyes are open, but your body remains paralysed, something it does at night to protect us, to stop us from acting out our dreams. But though we might feel awake, it's a state in which our mind can play tricks on us, and we see the remnants of the dreams we were just having. It can lead to people seeing figures in the corner of the room, watching or moving towards them. Some believe sleep paralysis only happens when evil is present, or, in Stu's case, an old aunt.
A few years ago, me, my wife and my daughter, who was 4 at the time, were staying at my dad's house. A little bit of background behind that: my dad lives on National Trust land in Essex, south of England, in a lovely little woodland. And you've got to travel down this 100-metre bridleway that opens out into a little clearing. It's a lovely little house, very tranquil. And he bought the house when my great auntie Jean had died. Right, done it all up, because he was a builder by trade, so he'd done up all his house. And every time we go round there, he still does as well. He'd turn around and he'd say, "Oh, I think your auntie Jean was walking around the house the other night. Yeah, the radio just like turned on at 2 in the morning and stuff like that." He's an electrician as well, so he knows all the wiring's okay. And he's always said that, yeah, you get feelings of her walking about the house. I'm a massive sceptic. I never really buy into much stuff like that. But my wife, on the other hand, big believer. Big believer, right? And she always used to say, "I get little feelings when I go in the house, you know. Ugh, don't like it, don't really like staying there." But we had to stay over there one night, so we got a blow-up bed and we stuck it in the spare room for my daughter to sleep on. And we put her to bed as usual, and we, stayed up for the night, a few drinks and everything, having a bit of a laugh with Dad and that. And time came to bed, probably about midnight we went to bed, and I went to sleep, and all was good. A couple of hours later, Innie wakes up, having a bit of a cry, So I get out of bed, I get into her bed. I said, "What's up, babe?" She's like, "I've just had a bit of a dream, Dad." I was like, "It's all right, don't worry, it's only a drink. Go on, get yourself back to sleep again. We're just up in the bed there, so it's, you're perfectly safe, everything's okay." And I thought she'd gone back to sleep again. And, you creep out of your kid's bed. If you've got kids out there, you'll know you creep out of their bed like one toe at a time, really slowly, so you don't wake them up. I thought she was asleep. So I got back into bed, pulled the covers over. My wife, she said to me, all okay? I went, yeah, it's all right. She's had a bit of a bad dream. She's okay, though. And then about a couple of minutes must have passed. And Immy, clear as a bell, just said, Daddy, why are you still standing there? I see my wife's eyes bricking it, honestly. And I must admit, sent a proper shiver down my spine to the point where I felt my skeleton shaking. I said to her, I'm not. I'm back in bed. And she said, no, you're not. You're still standing there by the wardrobe looking at me. Honestly, I was that close to getting up and going, that's it, we're going home. Babe, you're driving us home, come on, let's go. Didn't I? Went, no, I'm back in bed. And then she just said, okay. She went back to sleep. And it's one of those, where you don't really want to look round. I'm thinking, oh, God, I need to look at the wardrobe. And sort of had a little look round and no, nothing there at all. So anyway, didn't sleep particularly well that night because obviously the wife was bricking it. Went into the kitchen in the morning, having a drop of breakfast, and told my dad the story. And he just laughed and said, yeah, it's okay, just your great auntie Jean walking around, having a look at the kids. She hasn't seen them before, has she, Well, hasn't seen much of her anyway. And I was like, that's all very well, but like she died 20 plus years ago, She really shouldn't still be walking about the house. And we've not stayed at my dad's house since. My wife always insists on us driving home because of the fear of seeing my great auntie Jean walking about.
Our final story of the night comes from Chris, who has had not one, but multiple ghostly experiences, all that seemed to begin when he was living in Cyprus.
I was aware there was something in the house. I didn't know at that stage what, but I just felt the description of this sort of comparative thing I can give you. If you're walking through a city and you're suddenly aware that somebody's looking at you, but not only are you aware that somebody's looking at you, you look straight up into their eyes, and they could be on the 5th floor balcony of a block of flats, and your eyes meet. You don't look around in all directions, you just look straight up into them, and it was that sort of feeling. It was like there's something in this room, and I can almost sense where it is, but I don't know what it is, and it wasn't necessarily sort of bad or anything, it was just a presence. Okay. And then stuff started happening, weird things. I'd find things in the morning moved in the house, and I'd think, well, I know I had a couple of beers last night, but I genuinely don't think I've left the ironing board in the shower in the spare room. And anyway, didn't think too much of it. And the engineers on the radio station said to me, we're going out for a drink tonight, come with us. And I said, no, not coming out, I'm drinking too much, I'm going out too much in the evenings, I'm on the breakfast show, I need to be a bit more grown up now. So it didn't last, don't worry. So I didn't go, but they were saying to me, you've got to come. You go, no, I'm not going. So I went to bed at about 11:30, and about that time I was in bed reading, or I had the radio on or whatever, and I heard a noise, and I thought, oh, here we go. This will be the engineers coming back from the pub, and it's the sort of thing they'll do. They'll come around. The windows on the house weren't locked. The front door probably wasn't even locked, to be honest. It was in the middle of nowhere. Crime in Cyprus was non-existent at that stage. So I heard this noise and thought it's them. So I got up out of bed, went through to the living room, and basically told them to go away, as you do. So I shut the windows, went back to bed. And about 10, 15 minutes later, heard the noise again. And this time when I went through, there was a heavy wooden chair slid out from the table. And it was sort of across the room a bit, so I found it a bit strange. They've obviously got in, because I didn't lock the windows, I just shut them. They've got in, they've moved it, so I just shouted out the window at them to go away, invited them to go away, and then I pushed the chair back on the table. This time, I locked the windows, and I locked the front door, and I checked in all of the rooms, the kitchen, the bathroom, the spare bedrooms, whatever, checked everywhere, no one around, no one in, nobody hiding under a bed. In my head, it's the engineers winding me up because I didn't go for a beer. The only way in and out of the house now is through a French patio door in my room, but I'm going to see someone coming through there, so I'm okay, because the lock was broken on that. So fine, went back to bed. 10, 15 minutes later, heard it again, just this is just getting boring now. Still convinced, absolutely convinced it was the engineers, winding me up because I didn't go for a drink. So I went back through, the wooden chair was out from the table again, so I pushed the chair back under the table, sat on the sofa, looking at the chair, thinking, right, okay, how have they done this? They're clever guys, they're engineers, they've probably got fishing wire through the window, or they've done something. And as I sat there contemplating it, the wooden chair slid across the floor toward me. And it was a heavy chair, we're not talking about some flimsy little thing. It was a heavy wooden chair, and it slid across a marble floor toward me and made a as it came, which was the noise I'd heard. And at this point, I'm still thinking, how are they doing this? And I looked and I thought, well, there's no fishing wire around it. They're not pulling it through an open, a partially open window. There's not an earthquake, because you get earthquakes in Cyprus, but everything moves. It's not just one chair. Everything just went through. And in my head, I just sat there and went, well, I've kind of exhausted all of the stuff it could be now. And I'm only left with one thing, and that's that this house has got to be haunted. And I'd had an experience years and years and years before that, if you want me to share this one with you as well.
Yeah, please do.
I was 6 years old, and one of my nans passed away. She was living down in the middle of Kent. My granddad passed away. My nan was still living in the bungalow. Again, bungalows, it's a bungalow thing. Was still living in this bungalow in Kent, and she'd given my parents keys to the place, so if we went down, she wasn't there, go in, make a coffee. So we did that once. My mum, my dad, my brother and myself went down. She's not in, went in, had a coffee, left a note for my nan. Right, we're going out. My dad was out getting into the car. My mum, my brother, who was 6 years older than me, so he'd have been 12, 13, were standing in the hallway of the bungalow, next to the bedroom where my granddad passed away. And he had this dog, this poodle called Bimbo. It's best not to ask. Bimbo ran out into the garden, was just barking and barking at my dad and running around. And we were calling the dog, my mum, my brother and myself, calling the dog. It was taking no notice whatsoever. We, the three of us, my mum, my brother and myself, heard a voice. My mum and my brother swear it was my granddad's voice. I was only 6, it was just a voice coming from the bedroom where he died, calling the dog's name. It was just that one word, Bimbo. And the dog immediately put what poodles have left of a tail between its legs, came running in, ran to my granddad's side of the bed, sat on the floor and looked up at the bed as if it was looking up to be told off, and then just sat there really quietly and didn't do anything, at which point we left. So that was... well, my mum passed away a few years ago, but we still used to talk about that, and we still remembered it so clearly. When you get those things happening. This is a funny one. This will make you laugh. And I found comfort in this. So my mum passed away 4 years ago now, and we'd bought her an iPad for Christmas a few years before, and God bless her, she could never quite get her head round it, and she'd be stabbing the keyboard and whatever and doing things, and I'd get random messages, blocks of letters and numbers. Or I was in Afghanistan, and I said, Mum, if you keep sending me these, I'm going to get in trouble because people are going to think it's
code.
It's Russian sending me some message or something. I said, please stop sending. Anyway, she'd get to use it and whatever, but never brilliantly. She passed away, and a couple of days after she died, we were sitting down at the breakfast table with my dad saying, was there a song? Did you have a song that was your song that we can play at the funeral? Whatever. And he was like, oh. And eventually he came up with what was the song now? The Platters, Only You, right, okay. Eventually, he came up with a song and he said, it might have been that one that goes, Only You. Only You. Okay, that's the Platters. And then about an hour later, he said, no, I don't know if it was that. And then an hour later, yeah, it probably was. Anyway, we were kind of half and half. We said, all right, think about it, because we do need to get some songs together for the service. And if you think it's that one, great. And if you think it's something else, that's great. So I then left to go back to Germany, where I was working at the time, because the funeral wasn't going to be for another few weeks. And my brother phoned me one afternoon and said, you're not going to believe what's just happened. I said, go on, try me. I lived in a spooky house in Cyprus. He said, my brother generally works from home, so he was in his little office at one end of a very large kitchen away. My dad was asleep in an armchair in another part of the house. My brother's partner was away having a toe amputated, so he wasn't around. So there were just the two of them in the house. Dad asleep miles away, brother working in his office miles away. They had an Alexa device sitting on an old well at one end of the kitchen. And at full volume, with no one around, suddenly it sprung into life, started to play Only You, that song from the Platters.
Only you can make all this world.
And it played the entire duration. My brother and my dad sort of came into the room and looked at each other and went, did you? No. must be the radio's just come on. That's weird that it's playing that song. And at the end of the song, it finished. And it wasn't a radio station at all. It was just that song from the Platters playing randomly at full volume mid-afternoon with no one around. My mum had a brilliant sense of humour, and I can just, it was almost as if she was saying, for God's sake, Frank, stop mucking about. It is that darn song. Stop changing your mind. And I can just hear her saying it as well. It was just like, how can I, oh, I've got it. Yeah, Alexa. So we did play it at the funeral, obviously.
Only you.
Thus concludes our Christmas crypt of haunting tales. So all that's left to say is, when you're keeping an eye out for Father Christmas, be aware of ghostly spirits who may also be looking to pay you a visit tonight, when the veil between the living and dead is at its thinnest. Merry Christmas.